Hello there, my friends. Chris Marcus here with you for Arcadia Economics on an exciting, they say not to put the date on these things, but it's Monday, July 13th. And goodness, I'm going to try and contain my excitement, but so many fascinating things happening in the silver world. Plus, it is First Majestic Monday, if you can see my slick First Majestic Silver polo shirt that I have and love. And certainly because this video, well, I like wearing it anyway, and I feel kind of slick in it. But this episode is sponsored by First Majestic Silver tonight. And certainly now I don't think I'm allowed to give legal financial advice on YouTube. So by all means, that is not what I'm doing. But certainly if you think the price of silver is going up, you may want to take a look at First Majestic now. Wink, wink. I'm not saying, by all means, invest what is appropriate for you. Seek your counselor, advisor. Obviously, I can't know everybody's situation, but certainly it's one of my favorite silver stocks. And we'll dig into a little bit more why on First Majestic Monday, which we start off with, as you saw in the title, Eric Sprott talking about $110 silver. I just thought that was interesting and fun to listen to the other night while I was relaxing on my couch, because that's a good way to cheer up the silver bug. I'm going to play a short clip here. This is from the Sprott Money News. By all means, please check out their site. They bring these great calls. Listen to them every week. So hopefully it will be okay to play a little snippet here because I think you'll like what Eric Sprott had to say.
You know, it's interesting. I've had two technical analysts who I have a high respect for. One is Michael Oliver, who writes and gives interviews to King World News, and the other one's Chris Van Mullen from Technical.
Quick note, Chris was on the show last week. That's last Thursday's episode. So if you would like to hear what Chris said, one of the technical analysts that Eric listens to is on there, and let us continue.
Traders. And I've always said that Chris has suggested the target for silver, 27.31 this year. Michael Oliver had a King World News interview where he suggested also that silver was likely to go to the high 20s soon. There was an article by a fellow who goes by on Seeking Alpha, guy who goes by the name Astrolib, who writes very good material, and he came out and suggested that silver is obviously breaking out here. The last time it had this kind of breakout, it went up by 10 times. And he's postulating that we bottomed at 11, we go to $110. Do I think that's impossible? Not at all. With the kind of demand that we see for physical silver and the short position of the banks were short something like 350 million ounces of silver, wow, who knows where we could go, but we're going to go a long way.
So there you go. By all means, listen to the whole thing. Gee, what a day and age we live in that you can hear. I would say he's like, I think of Eric often as the Warren Buffett of the metals world. And certainly pretty cool that you get to hear him talk with Craig Hemke. So I thought you might enjoy that one. Again, there's Christopher Mullen. Fun interview if you didn't check that out yet. And here to what we report on every Monday and that Eric Sprott just mentioned. There in this column, the 4-week change, it's just 66 million ounces, just a few. Again, I love looking at this chart here where you see just this massive chunk. If we eyeball, maybe we'll call that 1125-ish. Total now 1357, so 200 plus million ounces. Interestingly, from the spike down, because that's really when this began. So, maybe we should or shouldn't let bankers know that if you drive the price down, people are going to now buy more silver, apparently. So go ahead, drive it down. I wondered a couple weeks ago if maybe the next time the price got torched out of left field, would that be the one that ends this? We've had like some mini spikes down. Who knows? But there you see there's a ton of metal being added in. And I thought this was interesting. You look at the daily. I've been checking these somewhat daily now. And last week, things were going slow until that wham, 8 burger, and then another 5. So what do we have on the total for last week? 17 million ounces. Um, big chunk. While at the same time here, we are looking at Comex Silver futures. It was 11,000 the first day, then it got up to 13,000. Now, usually there's the most in the beginning, so it's slowing down, but now 13,900. So that's almost 70 million ounces there. Another 17 last week in the ETFs. It's a lot. And as you may have heard Andrew Maguire talk about last week when he was on the show, somewhat hard to take at face value almost. And I don't know, I guess is part of the reason. When Eric Sprott talks about $110 silver, I don't know if I've put a price target. I understand very much the importance of not just throwing out wild numbers, not being overly anxious on the timeline. I've tried to do a good job of always phrasing that where it's like, if you told me by the time you're watching this that the thing Comex imploded and there was some failure to deliver, I mean, I think uniformly a lot of the people I have on here, we've all been stunned that it's 2020 and it's still going on. So I think it's above 50-50 that you see some sort of movement this year in the price, whether that's a full, like, hey, the Comex is a fraud recognized by the world. I think it could happen at any point. I also factor in that a lot of energy is being invested in delaying that as much as possible. So it's a hard, and I know that's not the answer people want, but rather do that than otherwise. Yet when Eric Sprott says, is it conceivable to me that if you did have a complete, hey, the metal's not there, this is all rehypothecated, Fort Knox isn't there, that type of event, then yeah, I could see $110 silver. So there you go. I'd appreciate if somebody doesn't misquote me. Tried to be delicate with that phrasing, but and why is that conceivable? Here's a headline. I'm sure you've seen plenty of them. Here's California to close indoor restaurants, movie theaters, and bars statewide as coronavirus cases rise. I know you've all seen the headlines of increased cases. I hope those headlines aren't accurate. I hope everybody is doing well and staying safe out there. I've been hearing from people who have been affected and sending some warm wishes that everyone is feeling better. I guess to the degree back to the silver market, I just think about what happened a couple months ago and we saw the way things got shut down. So another factor, maybe a good way of phrasing it is that something to price in. So were that not the case, then maybe now how much do you price it in? Is it a basis point or more than that? I'm just, I guess the way I like to introduce things, and then you can make your own decisions. And also along the way, I'll share my thoughts. But here's an interesting headline: silver to become the new gold. Credit Suisse strategists at Credit Suisse have noticed a great silver performance lately. I mean, I don't know, it's a great silver performance. I mean, I'm kind of in the wake me up when we get into the 20s camp. I mean, it's good to see. Clearly, there's something changed with the volatility, and to me, does it personally matter whether silver is 19 or 21 or 23? No, but it's more in my mind, like, what are the underlying things happening that might drive it there? If this is additional volatility because it's hard to source metal, or people are realizing that the Fed is printing unlimited, that Jerome Powell went on to 60 Minutes and just lied about everything, and they're hoping nobody notices. And, so there's different reasons that things can happen. Now, at least in this thing, I didn't hear the actual quote of them saying silver to become the new gold yet. My takeaway is just that you have headlines. Last week, it was Goldman calling for $2,000 gold. I mean, if investment banks are going to start recommending silver to their clients, then that's the type of thing that could give you $110 silver. Because I would say in my conversations with bullion dealers, mining companies, analysts, fund managers, so forth in the past couple of weeks, this is just, I share my gut intuitions. Take those as you will as time to time. I try to label appropriately. But it seems to me like even institutional money on a new level is now even getting into silver equities, whereas that wasn't the case in my impression, which is not seeing everything out there necessarily, but that feels a little bit new to me. And gee, if they're going to stick around for any period of time, gold's $1,800. We saw another spike in the silver price, which we will get to in a moment. Although before that, here's Keith Neumeyer talking about, will we see $100 silver soon? As I've mentioned before, I'm a big fan of Keith. And I know some people say, well, he's running a silver company, so he's saying $100 silver. I don't know that I agree with that. I mean, I know some people could conceivably say that about me, yet if you actually take the time, the guy, it was more like, wow, this is pretty out of line. Maybe I want to go get exposure to this in my business. That was my understanding of what Keith said in the Big Silver short book about his background, and similar with myself, and hey, whatever somebody wants to interpret of that, I guess is fine. But when you listen to the reasons why he talks about that, is interesting. Although in this particular clip, I'm going to play a minute of this one. I thought it was very interesting what Keith mentioned about when the prices were lower and how First Majestic reacted to that.
Underperformed. We had silver bad down at $13, $14 just a month ago. Today it's now close to 18. So that's a big difference for us. A $4 move on silver prices is pretty big. Fortunately, I didn't sell any metal of ours under $17. We sold a little bit just last week on the rally, just a little bit under 17, but all our sales have been north of $17 silver. So I didn't get caught in that whole wave of selling and get, I know many producers probably just sold into a down market, and you'll see when they're coming out with their financial statements how they did. But in our case, I decided to inventory the metal. So, we had at the end of a couple of weeks ago, I think we hit a peak of something like close to 1.2 million ounces of silver in our inventory. Wow. Because I refused to sell it. So by doing that, obviously our investors will see, a nice gain on our financial statements as a result of me holding out on.
So there you go. This was on Departures Capital. Go check out the full interview. Thank you, Aaron. Thank you, Keith. And again, maybe I'll just add one last comment there. Certainly, like if you're looking for someone who can read drill reports to a high-tech level or the financial statements, I would say go get Kranzler's journal. He'll tell you at a higher level than, although I guess what I took away from the trading floor, and especially seeing all these situations where sometimes the numbers are great, but in Enron, they had great numbers, but you couldn't count on them. So especially at noticing how, when I was a little bit new to the mining world and first starting talking to a lot of these companies, and one of the things I asked people often was, when you're looking at a new project, what's the most important things you look at? And I mean, the answer is almost always the team, who's running it. And it's like, think about it. Maybe if you weren't sure which stocks to buy, but you could call up Eric Sprott, probably love to do that because he knows more. He's done it. When people know how to do something, that's something I look for. So also when the people running the company are seeing the same things, where I remember what got me early on into First Majestic was that Keith was the only one who was noticing that there was something going on with the price, which I think, is nice if the guy running the company is aware of. I'm not saying there aren't others out there, but by far, Keith has been the most vocal. And, now they can't maybe say, well, we're never going to sell it till the manipulation ends. But I always felt, well, person makes thousands of decisions per day, per week, per year. And, at least if someone's aware of what's going on, and whenever it is possible to do things like that, and here a nice example where, Keith understood what was happening, and looks like he made his shareholders and investors a lot of money. So anyway, again, legal disclaimer. And yes, First Majestic is a sponsor of the show, but that's how I feel about it. And I can only tell you that, and leave you to research, make your own decisions. But before we wrap up tonight, we did have a silver rally. You see, open, what do we have? 1868 there. And I know I called Bill Murphy. Even my friend Bill Murphy was smiling today. I heard him. He was happy. We did call him before. It looks like almost 30-cent drop there. So I think it's interesting how I got a lot of emails, Twitter comments, and so forth saying, well, we kind of expected that. And I think that's in a way a good thing. Maybe not that we expect every time there's a rally to see it get beat up a little, or maybe, but just getting used to that. And that I think we're on the verge of something historic. When day that actually arrives, we'll see. Yet I don't think that part matters as much, at least to me. What I think of more, I say, rather than trying to time the market, I go in the backyard and just close my eyes and try and quiet my mind and realize that the thing's going to go up, the thing's going to go down, the fundamentals are in place. You hear the reasons why. It'll happen when it happens. But really just being able to handle that. And whatever your strategy is, just having something in place that you feel comfortable with. And my guess is that the more people try and trade and outfox the market, usually the more that can go deviate from the plan. So anyway, that's what I just actually, let me rephrase it. I just sharing what I think and train my own mind to do. I'm not going to tell anybody else what to do. That would be quite silly, even if it were effective, which will just, I think you get the point. And anyway, we did see some volatility, but some bigger moves happening there. And before, we got two last quick ones here. These were just so special, though. Here, I've just set this new thing up on my phone, so I finally get a better feed and see some of the things I'm fascinated by. I had not realized, it's funny, I think, did Tesla get above 1800 today? Where's the top of that chart? I looked up this morning and I saw Tesla at 1750. I thought it was like converting to a different currency. As you see, it looks like 1791 at one point, may have crossed 1800 day high, 1794.99. So didn't quite get there. But I remember just thinking about how I thought it was wild that Tesla had gone from 225 to about 1,000 following the swap lines, repo lines with the Fed. And I hadn't realized that here it is. And I mean, look how quick this happened. You have June 25th, it's at 9:59. So in, I don't know, 2.5 weeks, let's call it, basically almost doubled. Also ironic because as I'm finishing up Benjamin Graham's The Intelligent Investor, I mean, he's going right now, the part of the book I'm in, they keep going through the internet bubble examples of how these stocks were doubling in 5 days, which makes me wonder, I don't know, are we getting close to the end? Hard thing to say. So at 1,700, I was like, wow, I wish we were home right now to buy some puts on that. And, you know, I think maybe I actually do have a new account with some money that Chris has earned that I'll be talking more about it, a little option project that I'm doing. But, you know, that's the thing with these bubbles. I mean, it could have gone up to 1,900. In this case, it came back down to 1,500. And, you know, along those lines, though, something I've been thinking about a bit is that one thing that's nice about investing is where it's completely acceptable to cherry pick your opportunities. So, you know, if something is a 51.49 favorite, maybe that's a good trade to take. But if I only can make one bet and that's 51.49, and somewhere else on the board there is something where I'm an 80 or 90% favorite, then in that case, I would say that taking the 51.49 favorite trade would be a mistake, if such a thing, depending on how you define learning experience, but just something to keep in mind. So, I mean, I'm not saying to go out speculate on Tesla, but it's interesting. Last one here before we wrap up tonight. This was from Alistair McLeod. I'm sure most of you are familiar with Alistair. He was on the show a couple weeks ago, and he just last week had a story of potential crisis in Comex Gold. And I'll just skip to the conclusion here. Bullion banks are between a rock and a hard place. For years, they've been playing the hedge funds as angler hooks plays a fish. The game has ceased. There's no easy way for them to get level. At the moment, they're trying to put a lid on the price, but the cost has been rising open interest and therefore rising mark-to-market positions. So they have not booked a loss, but you darn well know your P&L every day you're on that trading floor. August active contract runs off the board at the end of this month, and bullion banks are likely to be forced into large delivery volumes again. Interesting thought. I was thinking about that the other day. I mean, it's like we've watched silver in July now. Soon enough, gold coming up again. Furthermore, the exchange for delivery arbitrage facility between the COMEX and LBMA is broken, allowing COMEX premiums to London spot to go unchallenged. It is increasingly possible the gold contract is evolving into deep crisis, and that force majeure might have to be declared if, as seems increasingly inevitable, a wider banking crisis ensues. So there you go from Alistair McLeod, and that, as well as everything else that we shared on tonight's show, are some of the many reasons that I am a big fan of silver and why I'm a big fan of First Majestic Silver. Again, invest with what's appropriate to you. But if you'd like some more information about First Majestic, coming your way now is an interview I did a couple months ago with Keith that gives you a nice overview of some of the things going on. And with that said, have a great night and enjoy.